What is going on, my fellow geeks, and welcome back to Raving Geeks.
I do have a media recommendation.
I love Lord of the Rings. Superheroes, movies, a little jack of all trades, I guess.
So what makes me a geek?
What is going on, my fellow geeks, and welcome back to Raving Geeks, your weekly pop culture podcast from Central Michigan Life, where we discuss all things geek culture, which is like high culture, but better. If this is your first time joining us, make sure you follow the CM Life Instagram and Twitter pages for updates on the podcast, and to look for us wherever you find your podcasts, including YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on our website at www.cm-life.com. My name is Brendan Valentine, and I'd like to thank you all for joining me and my fellow co-hosts this week, who will introduce themselves in a second with our question of the week. This week's question is, what is your favorite geek season? So, like, we have summer, winter, fall, spring, and, like, I'll explain this. This came from a Twitter DM. Like, is there a a time of the year where you geek out most? Not necessarily, like, the question is, what is your favorite geek season? I asked to elaborate, and they gave the example of their favorite geek season is convention season, when there are conventions in their town. So I can give my answer really quick. My favorite geek season is the month of May, or the first week of May in particular, because that is when Marvel releases their first summer blockbuster, and it's also my birthday. But that's when I feel like summer, like, pop culture stuff kicks off, that first weekend in May, and like that first like week. And that's the time of year I usually look forward to the most.
Okay. Oh, Isaac Hunter here, everyone. Glad to be here this week. Oh, that's a good question. I would almost have to say probably October, just because I love fall and I love Halloween, and if there's ever like a new Halloween themed movie, it comes out around October. They're not going to release that, in January or February. And so I do like that, and I can geek out. And I also like to geek out on some of my favorite Halloween movies and TV shows, and related fall things like Over the Garden Wall. I watch that like twice a year. It's so good. So probably around the fall time. And usually there's usually a big hit blockbuster that comes out in like December, which isn't that far later, so it's pretty good.
Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Hope. So I'm gonna say like December/January-ish geek season, because that's when like some of the bigger titles come out. So like this year is West Side Story and Spider-Man No Way Home. So like I really like around like the winter geek season, because then I'm also usually home, and when there's not a freaking pandemic happening, then I can like go with my family and be a big family event. Like my cousin and aunt from Colorado come for Christmas and stuff, and like we can all go see a movie, or like go see a kids movie with my nieces, because everyone's out of school, so we can actually all do something together. So that's
very sweet. I love that for you guys. Alrighty, well, thank you both very much. Now, let's get things started with our geek news of the week. All right, my fellow co-hosts, what have you got for us?
All right, I'll start. I don't have anything big, but Laika, which I believe is what they're called, it's Laika. They're a studio that is known for making stop motion movies, such as Coraline, which is fantastic, and also
absolutely.
I think they made The Missing Link. Yep. But they're coming out with a new stop motion film called Wildwood, which is based on a book series called Wildwood. But basically it's about this like other enchanted world that's beyond Portland, like Oregon City. It's like in like the deep woods, there's like this magical world, and it's about a girl trying to get her brother back. And it's kind of just got like talking animals like bandits and like magical figures, and it's basically kind of just like fairy tales combined. But I looked at that, and that looks pretty cool. And I mean, I love Coraline, and I like stop motion, so I think that's gonna be cool.
Sweet.
Brendan, do you want to go next, or you want me to go?
I can hop in there if you want. So big news this week: Marvel dropped the first trailer for the Hawkeye series, and it looks really good. I don't know if anyone might be surprised by that. I didn't have high hopes, at least for the trailer, but I'm reminded every time that dang, does Marvel know how to make a good trailer? They also know how to make a good movie, but dang, do they know how to make a trailer? But yeah, it looks like this was partially why I picked this question for our question of the week. Is this one's very holiday themed? Like you're getting around like the winter, December, I guess like economic Christmas holiday, of a commercialized version. That's the word I was looking for. But it seems to be Hawkeye like confronting his his time as Ronin. Like in the at the beginning, not at the beginning of Endgame, but like that scene at Endgame where you see him fighting those crime bosses and kind of lost his way after he lost his family, and kind of confronting that through meeting Kate Bishop. But I think we can all agree that the highlight of the trailer is the fact that it is now canon in the Marvel universe that, similar to how Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote Hamilton in our universe, some playwright, I'm hoping it's Lin-Manuel Miranda in the Marvel universe, wrote a musical called Rogers, following Steve Rogers. And if you look at like Rogers,
it's Rogers the musical.
Yes, I'm very excited. I really hope that there's a scene where Bucky and Sam show up for opening night in the Hawkeye series. But we see a clip of the musical on stage, and you have someone playing Steve, and then you know someone playing Bucky and someone playing Sam. But then over off to the side, you get someone playing Thor and someone playing Loki, and in the back you get someone playing Hulk. Like it looked really funny, and I'm very excited. Overall, the series looks very fun. And then on another quick note, we got some video game announcements for some comic book based video games with the sequel to Sony's Spider-Man coming out. And then in development is a new Wolverine game, which if you want to go check out the trailers, those are on YouTube. They both look very good, but they are just teasers. So there's no actual gameplay. So not a whole lot of information on it yet. But if you want all the information we've got, go check out those trailers. I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't seen it. The teaser for Spider-Man's got some info, but they are just teasers. So Hope, shoot.
Well, going off of your comment about the Rogers the musical, Broadway is officially starting to reopen. Last night, The Lion King, Wicked, and Hamilton, so 3 big name musicals, all came back to Broadway. They were not the only ones. The theaters were full or almost full, but they were vaccinated and masked, and it's not tourists just yet. But musicals are back. Lin-Manuel Miranda was there for Hamilton. He made the opening speech before they started the musical, and then which is super sweet. Go watch it on YouTube. I love him. Lin-Manuel Miranda is awesome. Kristen Chenoweth was there for Wicked. There was also people, they all gathered outside of the theater for Hamilton, and there was a big celebration, and everyone was singing and dancing, and they were all masked and everything, and but they were recording everything. And I think Good Morning America also had Lion King actors on it singing the first song, Circle of Life, which was absolutely awesome. This isn't geek in the sense of movies, games, books, or anything, but if you geek out about football, which I do, you know that Ohio State played Oregon in the first week of college football, and that Oregon beat Ohio State. Somebody left a rubber duck in the middle of Ohio State's O on the field after the game, and it's on TikTok, and it's absolutely phenomenal because it's just a little, yellow rubber duck. So I think that's really awesome. Haley Atwell is going to be voicing Laura Croft in Netflix's Tomb Raider anime series now. So badass woman is still going.
Yeah, that's perfect. I perfect.
Yes.
I love that.
It's absolutely perfect. Like, yes. The Venom 2 director confirmed that a future crossover with Tom Holland's Spider-Man is going to happen, but when and how are still like the big pivotal questions. So I don't know that yet, but like obviously keep you updated on that. And finally, Anthony Mackie is going to star in Twisted Metal live action series. So if you're a fan of the Sony TV and PlayStation game Twisted Metal, Anthony Mackie has been cast as John Doe for the TV series. And I guess they are extremely excited at the studios for the potential of the show, and like with Anthony Mackie and everything. So
Sweet.
that is my geek.
That's going to be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's weird seeing Anthony Mackie as like a dark and twisted character.
I mean, like he wasn't dark and twisted, but like it was weird seeing Anthony Mackie like after him being the Falcon, seeing him not be the Falcon. Or I guess he's Cap now, so
yeah.
I
rewatched. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter like the other day, and Anthony Mackie's like his childhood best friend, and like in the movie is like helping Abraham like fight vampires. I'm like, oh my gosh! I was like,
isn't Anthony Mackie also isn't he also an 8 Mile?
Yeah, he loses the rap battle.
He does lose the rap battle. It just shows it's easier to beat Thanos than it is to beat Eminem. That's not my joke. That's definitely something I read on the internet, and that's a meme. But that's one of my favorites. Alrighty, well, thank you very much. I feel like we got some good geek news out there. But here at Raving Geeks, we like to do some critical thought analysis on our geek culture, and just we really like to reflect and analyze on what kind of geek paraphernalia we consume. And we noticed kind of a trend on Amazon Prime when they release superhero shows. They tend to be gory and violent, but also insanely good in like the top 10 shows I've ever watched. I'm of course referring to The Boys and this summer's big hit Invincible. And we were thinking about that here as geeks do, thinking about TV shows that we enjoy. And noticed that, while this was a recent trend, like with Amazon Prime kind of taking this idea, this isn't the first, big gory kind of like relying on violence, like superhero type pick that we've done. So we just want to, talk about, what we like about The Boys and Invincible and things like that, and what other properties we feel, have drawn on that appeal that Amazon is pulling. But I would just like to point out, if you have seen The Boys and you've seen Invincible, it's very clear that it's an allegory on the idea, or at least there's the presence of an allegory on the idea of Superman, and like criticizing, if there was this idea of a man of steel, would he really be but as benevolent as Superman is, and things like that. I'd also like to point out that if the person that owns the company of the people that are producing anti-Superman propaganda looks exactly like Lex Luthor, when are we just going to start saying that Jeff Bezos is Lex Luthor? Because like there's 2 shows now that are basically anti-Superman, anti-superheroes. You can't trust that big, super powerful alien guy. That's pretty Lex Luthor-y, Jeff. Come on.
Although if you want to sponsor us,
okay, tangent. Would Raving Geeks accept a sponsorship from Lex freaking Luthor?
I mean, if he gave us some of his billions of dollars.
But it's Lex freaking Luthor.
Yeah.
Okay, but if it was Lena Luthor, we would accept it from her.
Absolutely. But Lena Luthor in the Supergirl universe has complete control over that fortune. Lex doesn't have control over that money. And it doesn't have the money to give.
Listen, if I could take away some of Jeff Bezos' money, I will take it away from him because he does not need that much freaking money.
But if you want to sponsor us, we'll love sponsors.
Yep. Well,
But I mean, if we have Lex Luthor, who's Superman in our world? Or what are we saying, Superman?
I think the better question is, where is Smallville, so we can go make sure that that high school doesn't have any major problems? Because isn't Lex technically older than Cal?
Yeah, by a couple years, I think.
I don't know.
It depends on the version.
I mean, technically, Kal-El traveled many hundreds of light years in space as a baby, so he's actually probably been alive longer. But
well, yeah, but like, okay, I'll take us back from this tangent. We can go on this for a while on how old Superman is. But anyway, I think we should start with like just generally what we thought of The Boys, because that has been one of my favorite shows to watch in the past, couple years for sure. For those of you who aren't familiar with The Boys, it's basically this late stage capitalism meets comic book superhero type story where I'm actually coming to you, if you're watching on video, from Vought Tower right now. Homelander and I are hanging out. But there's this company called
He doesn't
Vought.
shoot you with his laser eyes.
No, we're friends.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so there's this company called Vought that basically owns all these superheroes and like does PR for them basically, so they can get away with all these heinous crimes. And the boys are kind of the victims of these crimes and are trying to get back at these heroes and Vought for taking advantage of them. That's the gist. It's very dark. It's very bloody and gory and violent, but also it is a really good commentary on the idea of being a superhero. And like, what does just having powers mean you are a superhero? It's not just the powers, it's also the good and kind acts, and you can do those good and kind acts of heroism and not have superpowers. I feel like that was a good summary.
Yeah. Couldn't have done it better myself. I guess, what are our thoughts on The Boys? I loved The Boys. I mean, how could I not? I mean, I love Carl Urban. Carl Urban in anything is fantastic.
Carl Urban using his natural accent. Being able to just swear is the pure gold.
Beautiful. I think great cast for everyone. The guy that plays Homelander is terrifying. Like, when you first see him, you're like, oh, he's like a powerful, handsome guy. And then you're like, wow, he can really disassociate emotionally just with like his face. And you're like, what's he gonna do next? Like, you almost never know what he's gonna do, because the show for me is just a bunch of suspense, because I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, spoiler alert for The Boys. For the next like minute or so, I think we should just get some scenes out of the way that we have to talk about. The whole scene on the plane with Queen Maeve, where like, oh, we're gonna go save the plane. It's like, oh, we can't save the plane. I guess I can't swear too hard on the pod, but like get back, where he's like telling people get back in the plane so you can go die and I can blow this up so there's no witnesses.
And like, Queen Maeve's like, can we at least save this child? And he's like, no, because then she's gonna know that we let this plane die. And they're like, oh god.
One of my favorite scenes, which shouldn't be one of my favorite scenes, is when the Deep tries to stop the boys from, and just he's like, I've got my whale friend, and then they just run the speedboat through the whale.
No.
Oh, dude, I felt so bad, but at the same time, I'm like, what show am I freaking watching?
Yeah,
like,
I don't.
When he tries to save the dolphin and then has to slam on the brakes and the dolphin just.
That was weird. I didn't like that.
Or when he wants to save the lobster. It's just a bunch of him trying to save sea animals.
He had like a romantic relationship with the dolphin. That was weird.
That was weird. Dolphins are known to have romantic feelings toward humans, and it is very uncomfortable. Did we already mention that like almost every hero in the Seven is like the Justice League almost?
Yeah. You've got Homelander like Superman. It's they do the similar thing with Watchmen. The Invincible, where they have, oh my gosh, they're. I know that like the Avengers is like probably the more popular of the superhero teams right now, but like when you're criticizing superheroes, you gotta go with the Justice League, and I feel like the basis of the Justice, like pulling this kind of like genre of superhero, of like superhero critical commentary, and like asking about, you know, what is this? It really has to stem from the Justice League, because the Justice League is like, you know, God's trying to figure out how to be human, and that's more compelling in this criticism because it's like they aren't quite like us, and we have to show why this is different,
Yeah.
and why power corrupts, and this kind of power can be bad instead of worshiping it.
And I mean, like Homelander is all like, he's very much Superman, but then also he is a symbol of American patriotism, specifically flying with the flag on his back, very much Captain America like as well.
He's almost like Lex Luthor's mentality, but Superman. Because like Lex Luthor of like, I'm trying to save humanity, but like only if it suits me, because otherwise you can all go die, and you know, I'll just say, oh, we didn't get there in time.
Yeah. Gosh, The Boys. And then there's I guess for the viewers that don't know, there's the 7 are the big ones, but then there's this whole retinue of I wouldn't say failed heroes, but basically people with abilities that aren't good enough to be pro heroes or like really good superheroes. And some of them get kind of weird, especially, I don't know.
Haley Joel Osment's character?
Yeah. Mesmer?
Yeah.
He can read, he can touch someone's skin and he can read their mind. Oh man. And he gets beaten up, and every time he gets a punch to his face, he can read the guy's mind. And I love that scene, even though it's awful.
Yeah. But I think the thing that was most shocking, like when I watched the show, was like from episode 1, it's just like dark theme after dark theme. And I think that's kind of a departure from the classical superhero stuff. Even like what they're doing in the MCU, it's generally like has this lighter tone. And I don't know, I feel like it fits really well. And I was kind of surprised that it fit really well. But then when we were talking like in our chat, it was like, oh no, this has worked before. Like this isn't brand new.
Yep.
Like,
I think it's new in the sense of like the heroes are being compensated because they aren't really getting paid, but they have like management people, and like they go to news conferences and have press conferences for themselves, and like galas where they meet people and have to, you know, shake hands, kiss babies, whatever. And I think it adds more of like the corruption versus more, and like the dark theme versus like other superheroes. Like my background has Punisher and Daredevil, and I don't remember who she is, so I'm really sorry.
That's Elektra.
Elektra, okay. But you know, they're dark and gory, but like Boys just takes it to another level of like, no, you can get away with it because we'll just be like, you said sorry, so you're all good now, and now you're gonna go do this good thing that we make sure the cameras are there for.
The aspect that is new, I guess, for The Boys is that, without spoiling things, only America has superheroes, and they take that as if they are divinely blessed by God, which is why they have superheroes. And they really milk that with the people of America, with Homelander almost being an angelic figure, you know, showing that America has the divine right to save the world. Which is pretty cool.
With also, what is it? Compound V?
Yes.
Compound.
Right?
Yeah. So that's a pretty major spoiler, but like, it's not this divine. So spoiler. Jump ahead 30 seconds or so. In the show, it's not this like divine right. It's actually like a corporation giving a you know, secret compound to babies. Also, one of the best scenes in the show is when they take the baby with laser eyes and use it as a freaking weapon. That is so funny. I love this show so much. But okay, so end of spoiler. Basically, that's just how superpowers work, and that's how they explain it away.
Well,
But
Compound V, they also use it like Flash uses.
A-Train.
A-Train.
No, I'm talking literal Flash, like connecting it to the show Flash.
Oh
Does it-
yeah, it's like like how Flash takes Velocity 9.
Yeah, V9. That like they can also use Compound V as like V9 because this isn't like a huge major spoiler because you learn about it within the first couple episodes. Like A-Train, who's essentially Flash, takes V9 to essentially become V9. Compound V to become faster, which sets off a whole lot of things. So.
Which is just what makes the show is A-Train doing that.
Yeah. Ugh.
But I think the main takeaway in our conversation about this of The Boys is I think this was the first show that kind of threw the gore in your face, and the way that like the CW does all like the overly dramatic, cheesy tropes in their shows and turns everything into a soap opera. I think Amazon Prime is doing that, but with violence. And it's just so hardcore. And like after I watched the first episode, I was like, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know if I can watch this. And then I watched episode 2 and I'm like, okay, I'm used to it. And I don't feel like it's a desensitization. I feel like it's a good plot tool to just show how awful some of these things can be, because I think in the real world we get desensitized to a lot of the news and they're like, all right, this is how it actually is. This is how this is happening. These are the results of, powers gone wrong. And I think that's something that kind of gets glossed over in your traditional superhero TV show and comic is you don't see the people coming in to clean up the mess. You don't see like the actual murderers and killers and the worst of the worst. And in this show we do. And I think that's why it's compelling, because we aren't being sheltered.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't feel sheltered when I watch an MCU movie, but when I watch this, I'm like, this is raw.
It's another level. It's just like MCU is like, by the way, here's this bad stuff. Of course, superheroes come in, there's damage, but like, whatever, someone else will clean it up. But like, this is like, here's superheroes, here's the bad stuff, here's the superheroes. No one's coming to clean it up. We're just going to make a press release about it and be like, oops, daisy. Also, here's a bunch of money so you don't get mad at us. But like, what are you supposed to do with that? Like, I also want to say really quickly, the fact that Jack Quaid is in this as like kind of the main character-ish, like I think of him back in the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
When he was for one of the careers. Like he was one of the tributes from like District 1 or 2. And also the fact that he's Dennis Quaid's son, but like all of a sudden I was like, wait, he's not a baby anymore. He doesn't have the baby face. Like he's definitely grown up. And then just contrasting him, because his character has like the innocence just getting into this world. And then you have Carl Urban, who like using his New Zealand accent is swearing up and down. And it's just like, dude, this is how it is. Get over it. Just like throws him into the deep end. No life jacket or anything. And just the two. And then you're also watching Butcher, who's Carl Urban, like taking care of the child as well. And like, no, I don't care about him, but come on, kid, let's go,
Yeah.
Like the relationships in this show are just like spot on. Like they're fantastic too.
Yeah.
And then as a departure from The Boys, another, because The Boys is based in real comic books. For those of you who don't know, the other show, based in real comic books that Amazon Prime developed this summer is an animated show called Invincible. And if you haven't watched it yet, highly recommend it. It's a pretty quick watch if you have like a weekend that you just want to. But it also has this like violent, gory theme. The title card every episode just keeps like. In the first episode, you get like a drop of blood. By the end of the show, the last title card is like just battered and bruised and drenched in like the like. Sorry for. I guess we should probably put a warning on this episode, but it's just drenched in blood. And like each episode, the main character, his superhero name is Invincible. He just gets demolished, like just black eyes, bloody nose, broken bones, like put in a coma.
Yeah. And it's weird because it's like the animation style I would almost compare to like Young Justice, where it's very, it's still cartoony. It's obviously cartoony, very bright colors. And like, you really think it's just going to be a normal show. Even the way that they talk sometimes, you're like, wow, it's like a normal superhero show. And then it's like, but let's have someone come in with a mace and break open someone's chest.
So they just yeet it out the window. Just like take that mace, smash the window, and then go, wing!
I think a fun bonus episode for the podcast would be to watch Invincible together and count how many times we see someone's organs removed from their body.
Is that going to be when we actually break the what are we calling it? Like the not actually hanging out together? Like
oh
we
yeah,
haven't quite
the
like all
pandemic fourth
seen
wall.
each other. But like
yeah. We've said this before on the pod, but we all met over Zoom because of the pandemic and because of the Delta variant. We were hoping to start recording in person, but we feel like it's safer to just keep doing this for now. This is also a plug. If you can and you aren't able, please go get your vaccine. Just a quick statement. Raving Geeks, although I don't think this should be controversial. Raving Geeks is pro-vaccine.
yes, we are. We are pro making sure that we are protected. So those who can't get the vaccine, mostly young kids right now, who are the ones who are getting the Delta variant the most, don't actually get the Delta variant. I have 2 nieces. So like, let's protect
we just want
to... Compound V,
Exactly.
Go be a superhero. Exactly. Like, come on.
Exactly. Perfect. Dude, what if okay, tangent, and this is, I'm not trying to spread misinformation, but like, what if the vaccine did give us superpowers?
Oh man.
That'd be freaking awesome.
That would be awesome.
But would we get to choose our powers?
Probably not.
I doubt it. Probably really gross mutations.
Yeah.
We all become the Hulk.
I mean, in a way, we all got superpowers as like first step towards immunity from COVID. So, anyway, with Invincible, because it's animated, you can kind of get even more horrific than The Boys, which, I'm glad I watched The Boys first and then watched Invincible later, because I don't think I would have been able to get past some of the scenes in Invincible if I hadn't had that like exposure before. But again, like super compelling. Despite the violence almost being too much, I still found it like necessary, like, because it seems like this is actually the world that these characters are living in, and it seems to have more weight and more consequences. Like you while they don't directly deal with like aftermath of battles, they like talk about it. Like the agencies like that they work with, that Invincible works with, is like, oh yeah, we have to send in a cleanup team. These are the damages. Invincible's father's also a superhero, and in his training, he's like, you have, when fighting bad guys, you have to not destroy the city. You caused a lot of unnecessary damages, and like it seems more grounded. And I feel like part of it is because, it seems less closed off, less sheltered from what would realistically be a very violent world if these types of powers existed.
Yeah, and I think Invincible does a really good job. Besides the fact that it has an A-list cast.
Oh heck yeah!
J.K. Simmons has such a good voice. Everyone has such a good voice.
And then you just get a bunch of like weird cameos where I'm like, oh, is that
Seth Rogen?
Is that Jason Mantzoukas, who's actually in like the entire show?
Yeah. Wait a minute. That's so good. But I think Invincible does a really good job at just like, it's not meaningless gore. I mean, there is a lot of gore and it has meaning. But you deal with a lot of issues, like Invincible, his character, whose name is Mark.
Yep.
Deals with, like he's got stuff with like girls and like his job, and it's very almost like Down to Earth, like the way a Spider-Man comic or movie is. It just happens to double with that super intense, no holds barred gore. But I don't know, because I feel like Invincible almost has this like looming like not Invincible, The Boys has this looming, like, I don't know what's going to happen. Anyone can die at any moment. But Invincible, it's like, I know that there's this like wholesome story somewhat behind everything.
Mhm.
About a father and a son, okay?
For those of you who are on TikTok, there was an audio from there's like been a couple of audios from Invincible that have circulated that are a little spoilery, but the main ones are look what they need to mimic even a fraction of our power. And what's the other one? Hope, do you know which one I'm talking about?
No, because what you just said has definitely not been on my side of TikTok.
Oh,
I've seen
think,
that.
Mark, think.
Oh,
Yes, thanks, Mike. Oh, another tangent. Sorry. Raving Geeks, just as a quick update, has Sea of Life has given us a wonderful new editor. If you've listened to Level Up Chips, Mike Gonzalez is now going to be editing the podcast. So we just wanted to give him a quick shout out. Mike, if you want to like unmute real quick and say hi to the people.
Y'all are making me blush. Thank you. Hi.
Well,
Yeah,
no, you
it's
just
me.
reminded us about the TikTok audio, and I was like, oh, thank you. And that was a great time to segue into saying hi to Mike and thanking him for all he does here with both Level Up Chips and now on Raving Geeks.
Listen, this is all trial by fire. Let's see how it goes. But
I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, but I don't know what's going on with my camera. But anyway, I'm just gonna go back into the corner.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yes. I think one thing, too, ending that tangent and going back to Invincible and the Boys, is there have been movies or shows that just use gore and, like, fight scenes because they're like, oh, this is cool, and, like, we have the money for it, so let's do it. But they don't have, like, a storyline or, like, the reason for it. Whereas, like, these two are both like, no, this is what it is. This is why we're doing this. Like, you can sit down and be like, yep, I can trace that fight back to that talk, that fight. That, you know, it's very much like, you know why it's happening. Versus, like, hey, I'm a superhero and there's the villain, so that we're going to fight. And then, you know, superhero wins. Like, okay, what was the point of that? Versus, like, no, these tragedies happened, or X, Y, and Z. And so I think that adds another level to it, because it also means that the writers had to come up with very dark thoughts, which, like, it's very easy for some writers and not so easy for others. So to know that these shows have managed to get writers that can come up with these things is like, these are some talented people.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point you made about like the gore in like previous things. It was because like they thought that was what people wanted, or like it like in Deadpool, for example, like him getting chopped in half and like having to regrow his limbs is for comedic effect. It's not like it's for comedy, not tragedy. Whereas in The Boys and Invincible, it's supposed to ground it in reality and have a tone shift to make it like serious and seem more real. Whereas like I feel like Deadpool, heck, even like the new Suicide Squad movie, like the gore, it's while some of it does make like the scene more serious, sometimes it's just like when spoiler alert for the Suicide Squad, when King Shark just rips that guy in half, like that's just to show how strong King Shark is, not to make it more serious. And like when I guess a lot of King Shark examples, but like that whole scene where they're like murdering the freedom fighters and they're turning it into a game, that has plot because it's like showing like the ego measuring contest between Peacemaker and Bloodsport. But at the same time, it's like comedic effect.
It's funny.
They're using gore and violence as a way to, you know, they kind of belittling it. Well, here it's like, no, this is the reality of like the powers we're working with.
Yeah. And I want to say too, like Marvel touched on it a little bit when John killed Nico, one of the Flag Smashers with the shield. Like they touched on the fact of like, hey, he got the super soldier serum, and like, oh, you think he's Captain America? No, actually, like he has very bad tendencies, and like can actually just rage out and kill someone. but I don't think Marvel has quite figured that out yet. And I also don't think that they really are ever going to go that dark. Just because, like, I mean, other than the TV shows that they've had, they really don't have superheroes unless, like, if you know some comic that's like a really dark Marvel comic and like you want to tell me about it, please comment on it and comment on our YouTube video, send us a thing on Twitter or TikTok, like, because I want to know if Marvel would actually have something that they could go this dark, or if it's just gonna be like
Marvel has plenty of
like, I mean, the Ultimate Universe, for instance.
Yeah, well, like even the big one I think of when I think of dark Marvel storylines, they've already turned into a movie, and that's the Spider-Man the death of Gwen Stacy. Like I know, like currently, like a main character, especially a love interest, dying like is pretty like common at this point. But at the time, that was pretty intense, and they did that in Amazing Spider-Man 2. But I'm thinking maybe if you went into like some, I guess Underground Comics is its own separate thing, separate from Marvel. But like they have some alternate universe stuff. There's a lot of like comics that I think it's more. Yeah, Mike just put in the chat. There are Punisher comics where they're like heavy, deep themes similar to Invincible or The Boys, such as like harassment and assault and like serial murder and like really getting into some like of the really gritty stuff. But I think the MCU's like the episode. Sorry, hope didn't mean to cut you off.
I was gonna say, like, I just don't think that Marvel will ever go that dark. Like,
I don't think the MCU will. I think that's the epicenter of like the media that they're putting out right now is MCU stuff. But I think if like I guess Sony has only specific properties, but if Marvel wanted to branch out into more adult themes, they could.
Yeah. Because like I see it in DC more using some of like the darker themes a little bit more. I mean, you just think of Batman and like or Titans on HBO Max, like going into that dark and gruesome. Whereas like I don't know, I still see the MCU as like kind of like going back to the Hawkeye trailer, like that family oriented, like do the good guy stuff, and it's all there is the bad stuff, but like it's not going to be super dark and dramatic.
Heck, if you think about Black Widow, like they could have gotten a lot more serious with like Dreykov as a villain, like very clearly like controlling sexist patriarchy, but they didn't go so far as to like have him be like, I guess, abusive in a way that would make it like topically relevant for like the Me Too movement, which like you can see the representation, but like there were like things that are suggested and could have gone on, but they don't touch on those because that's just not Marvel's brand. That's not the MCU's brand, and that's not the topics they're trying to cover. They're trying to show Black Widow as an awesome superhero, not these are the crimes that awful people commit in the real world. Like,
yeah. In the end, I mean, it's really Stan Lee wanted something to where you could look at something and feel good when you're done watching it, not bring it down.
And that's Marvel. And that's Marvel. One of the biggest appeals of Marvel. That's Marvel Comics, especially like, I don't know, Spider-Man's always been the poster boy for Marvel Comics because he's one of the most popular characters. But like at the end of the day, he's always your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and he's always going to be, fighting in your corner. Whereas there's Batman comics where Batman doesn't technically win.
Yeah. Well, and like also think of Marvel, their first superhero comic to try and bring comics back into the world rather than the comic book ban, was a story about a superhero family with the Fantastic Four. Like it's always been rooted in family values and like the good guys winning. And I mean, obviously Infinity War happens, but like, they're more of the superheroes in the good light versus the, reality of what some superheroes end up being or could end up being.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's just kind of our thoughts on the topic. I know there's a lot of these are like really heavy themes, but I think there was kind of this new wave of like interest in superheroes, kind of starting with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies in the early 2000s, evolving through the X-Men movies and now the MCU. And I think that's kind of evolving with its audience, because I think a lot of like they really capitalized on like younger kids and like former comic or like existing comic book audiences. And now as the existing comic book audiences, like we're already adults and some of the children have grown up and you have this bigger audience, I think there's kind of like this need for a greater struggle philosophically than just good versus evil. It's like good versus evil, like in the case of The Boys, like evil that is like systemic in a way that you can't fight it directly, not just because they're more powerful, because they're sneakier and they have more money and things like that. It's not just who's I'm morally superior, so I'm going to win. It's like neither of us, we're in a moral gray area, and objectively we're doing things wrong, but we're doing it for the right reasons. So does that make it okay? And I think themes like that are really compelling now. And I think the kind of the ways you have to show that can get pretty violent. But I think the message is worth sharing.
Yeah,
and writing about.
I would say for all these, because we're getting a lot of these darker, superheroes aren't all what they're chopped up to be, is really a lot of the stuff we're seeing. And I would say that one of like the pioneers behind it was the Watchmen comics
Absolutely.
and movie.
I 100% agree.
I had the comics behind me. For those watching, for those listening, I mean, Alan Moore, it's a story that is incredibly dark, and it really just goes over that if you are the kind of person that would put on a mask and be a hero, you are probably not right in the head. And so when the movie came out in 2009, I think, it was like the first time we actually saw caped people basically be awful, like the superheroes be morally bad, or like one of the guys who's very Batman-esque, Rorschach, is like his moral meter is basically chaotic, crazy, lawful, where he'll kill you for like doing anything, but also he has a lot messed up in his head. I don't know. Batman has a very like a code. Rorschach doesn't quite have a code. Rorschach, if he thinks you're a criminal, you need to be off the streets or dead, which also gets you off the streets. One of my favorite. Sorry, you just reminded me of this one. I get chills every time I either read the page or watch the scene in the movie. But Rorschach, spoiler alert for Watchmen, gets arrested and put in prison, and some guys that he's put in there come to attack him, and then he kind of beats the crap out of them and then screams at the rest of the inmates, I'm not stuck in here with you, you're stuck in here with me. And it's such a good line, but it also shows like Rorschach is very unhinged and he is not afraid to be in there with you when everyone else would be terrified. Mm-hmm. So, and I definitely agree with you, Isaac. That's I think Watchmen and like that era of like graphic novels in starting in like the 80s moving through the 90s really started to beg the question. And I think we're starting to get a kind of an elaboration on some of those themes in more modern media and more modern media adaptations, even with the Watchmen HBO series. So, alrighty. Well, as always here on Raving Geeks, we like to end with some recommendations. Hopefully we'll give some more positive ones than the themes we talked about here on today's episode. But I hope y'all liked it and thought it was worth talking about. I know we definitely did. But yeah, we got movies, video games, comics, or anything else geeky. Hosts, would you like to start?
I'll start. On a much lighter note, I'm going to suggest 3 movies, and they all connect together. The first one is Mary Poppins, the original with Julie Andrews, because I was listening to Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and Step in Time driving back to school on Monday, and I was like, I really want to watch that movie again. Julie Andrews is Queen, and so I highly recommend that one. The second one is Saving Mr. Banks, and I recommend you watching this one second because it gives you a lot of insight into Mary Poppins and like what you wouldn't know. I shared it with my dad last year / over the summer because like he had never seen it and I absolutely love it. And he was like, well, that makes a lot more sense. And I went, I also found the Mary Poppins book by P.L. Travers at a resale store, so I'm really geeked out about that. But the third one is Mary Poppins Returns with Lin-Manuel Miranda and, oh my gosh, Emily Blunt. Thank you. Blunt. I was like, Emily Blunt, who is also a queen and king in their own rights. But the music is fantastic. The storytelling is phenomenal. And I know they're Disney movies, but honestly, those three I would watch anytime, even though I'm mad at Disney. So, yeah, that's enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, my recommendation is not the most wholesome. I just recently watched the horror movie *Malignant* on, I think it's Netflix. I could be wrong. No, I don't think it's Netflix. But it's by James Wan, and I want to say that it did creep me out, and it was freaky. And I would say it's kind of worth the watch. Didn't blow me away, but it's worth the watch. A more positive recommendation: Sky High.
That's always a good recommendation.
Always a good recommendation.
On my end, if you want like a good, I guess family oriented or like strong friendship group also oriented superhero TV show, the CW show Stargirl had a stellar first season and is back for a second season, which I'm not caught up on, but I'm enjoying. So I highly recommend that. Breck Bassinger does a great job as Courtney. So and Stargirl is one of I feel like is a very underappreciated comic book character, and I think they do her justice in the show. So, well, that is all we have for you today. Thank you all for joining us here on Raving Geeks. Make sure to leave a comment wherever you're listening from. If you want to give us a question of the week for next week, you can feel free to DM us on Twitter, put it in the comments on YouTube. I guess if you can reach out to any of us individually, even though we don't always post all of our individual information. TikTok, also a great way to reach out to us. But we just love to hear what you thought about this episode and anything you want to hear from us in the future. So like I said, Facebook or Twitter at Raving Geeks. And as always, I have been Brendan Valentine alongside my co-hosts.
Hope Gooderall.
And I'm Isaac Hunter.
Stay geeky and have a great week, everyone. So long.